Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Hearthstone Masters Tour for Montreal Online. My name is Frodan. I'm joined by Derek Brown, and we're going to be covering round two of Swiss. As round number one, as we always know, is quite the the early marathon, and we're going to continue chugging along and find out who will march on close to becoming the players that will advance to day two, and who will ultimately put their stake and claim for Grand Masters for 2021. Eric, how was round one, Phil? And what are you looking forward to this upcoming series between RDU and che0nsu?
Well, I will say that after that marathon first game between Glory and Hunter Race, it wasn't a particularly arduous fill there with the rest of the matches from round one, because that Turtle Mage took a while to take the win. But I'm still loving taking a look around on social media, seeing how all the different players are performing. Some upset for some players, I think, expected to take the first win, as you could definitely argue about RDU and che0nsu here, because I think for the English-speaking scene, it's pretty clear that RDU needs no introduction at this point. One of the most popular Hearthstone streamers for a long time and very well decorated player in the competitive scene. But che0nsu, for me, in this season of APAC Grandmasters, was my player to watch. I expect very good things from him at the moment. And he's backing it up so far with some very, very good performances on ladder.
Yeah, that's right. These are two players who have, made deep runs in their respective regions. che0nsu, of course, even being a world finalist historically. So not too much introduction outside of the fact that these two players are grandmasters and excel within their program. RD, of course, having his best season last, or rather the previous playoffs. And he seems to be doing well right now in this current season of number one, we have Priest versus Druid. Rogue bans on both sides, which is fairly straightforward, as Rogue has proven to be one of the more popular aggressive archetypes that can really pressure classes like Priest and Druid at a reliable clip, even after the Secret Passage nerf. And che0nsu is going to start things off with a ramp in his opening hand here. Choosing the path, you have the smoothest of curves if he chose to coin Lightning Bloom and Overgrowth. And just pretty overall fast plays here. Players making swift decisions. As che0nsu is going to go for this early Twilight Runner instead, which I do like.
Interesting. There were so many different ways to go for that there. It could have been Lightning Bloom Overgrowth on this turn and then curve into Speaker Ghidra, which even if you don't get the Spell Burst effect, is just like a reasonable way to fill out the curve. But quite clearly here, I think he wants to just guarantee himself the Twilight Runner, crucially before the combo of Cabal Acolyte plus Wave of Apathy can come down, which I think is a good spot here. Guaranteeing himself the card draw is crucial, because his hand isn't doing it at the moment.
Yeah, very much so. I find that with Druid, a lot of times players maybe obsess over the ramp a little bit too much and kind of forget that ramp is only a piece of what you really need for your deck success. The other part is card draw to really back up and capitalize on these on these powerful mana effects that you can get for the later turns. And so now che0nsu is set up extremely well. Drawing those two extra cards, I mean, look at it. He just picked up Overflow. Had he not drawn those two cards, he took it a little bit slower. Yep. Maybe that Twilight Runner would have been dealt with, and he doesn't have access to that convenient draw and stuff.
Also worth mentioning now, as is probably fairly obvious by the Moonfire in his hand, that, wow, okay, this is Malagos Druid for che0nsu, so he does not necessarily have to lock down the board right at the start of the game. But what I will say is it's looking like he will lock down the board right at the start of the game, because this combo of minions here will allow him to chew through Kaj and kill the Twilight Runner on the inside of it. It's a devastating turn here for RDU.
Yeah, I mean, he does... Oh, never mind. The Moonfire is committed. I was thinking that he might be able to keep the Wretched Tutor, but yeah, that is quite annoying. Does have ways to deal with it, but it does require him to use some pretty valuable combo pieces. You mentioned Wave of Apathy, one of the more powerful cards in the Priest class. It's also a dual class card from the Scholomance Academy set, and it does end up being very nice with Shadow Madness if he wants to use it to, say, draw cards for himself. But he does need to eventually part ways with other cards too if he wants to deal with this Sated Thresher, or sorry, the Lake Thresher.
Yeah. And I think I like it. With the Penance as well, it's a lot of resources used up, as you say, but clears the board and crucially draws him 2 cards. So we can find some of those other useful resources, like maybe a second Murazond, the one that was actually in his deck, which just watch and I'm sure you'll see how powerful that card can be.
Very much so, and yeah, definitely loving the hand of RDU as the game continues to develop, because Priest first rose up in prominence in the beginning of Skullman's Academy launch, largely to kill Druids, because Druid was so powerful with their early guardian animal builds that it felt unstoppable, and Priest was one of the few classes that could really go toe-to-toe with removal. And so, this is definitely the turning point of which che0nsu, playing a Malygos variant of it to combo, is going to try and get his hand as well prepared as possible before Priest eventually wins the board and controls the rest of the game here.
Tough turn now, though, for che0nsu, because he does obviously want to clear his hand out to make room to draw some cards with the overflow, but that's not such an easy task here, necessarily.
Oh, really? Playing Forest Warden Omu, utilizing the spell burst to gain mana crystals immediately, using the Breath of Dreams with Alshraz in the hand, getting 9 crystals back, and starting to develop pressure. RDU. He is not super well prepared for this. Oh, okay,
you know what? That was sick. That was really cool. I have actually never seen the specific interaction of Omu and then gaining a hard mana crystal off of a ramp spell, which then got him the refill up to 9 and not 8 mana crystals, so he could play the Ysera, to play the Alexstrasza as well. That was very clever.
And it's on 7 mana, so RDU has very limited options. Soul Mirror is pretty much the only card that che0nsu's thinking about that RDU would be able to clear unless RDU generated some resources to double remove these minions. And RDU doesn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I think that the way that che0nsu is looking at this is, I stick a board, if he can't clear it, obviously, he's just going to win the game, is how he's looking at it. But if he can clear it, he's made some room in his hand. As we can see, though, unless RDU finds a 0 mana spell to activate the spell burst effect on Omu, he is not going to have any mana, and che0nsu can attack for 13 damage on this turn. He just needs the tiniest bit extra to close out the game.
That's right. He's on a draw for lethal with any of these cards that are able to draw. It is weird with Overflow since it will heal his opponent, so probably not that. But if he picked up a single Moonfire, a Swipe, anything to add extra damage off the top, he should be clearing out the game. However, I think he also is understanding that if he can't, he is staring at 21 damage on the backswing through the form of these 2 dragons and the Omu on his opponent's side. Not to mention the Omu that RDU summoned through the Murazond also has Spell Burst.
Yeah, so he could take a kind of safer route and go for Speaker Ghidra plus Overflow. Pretty much guaranteed to not hit lethal then. But what it would allow him to do is have an 8 attack minion with Wind Fury and Rush from the Speaker Ghidra to clear off both of these dragons.
Nature speaks through us.
Okay. And does get the Teacher's Pet pulled out, the last of his 5 mana beasts. Not to mention still pushing that potential lethal. Oh, if he if he used Lightning Bloom for that hero power and RDU had committed to Plague of Death, he actually would have a lethal setup.
Yeah, that was probably just a little bit better, wasn't it? I think if che0nsu had the time, he would have just slammed that down, because there really is very little else that RDU could do. It has to be Shadow Word Ruin otherwise.
Trying to think of a way for RDU to get out of here reliably anyways, because he could just rip the Plague of Death. But a lot of times as Priest, you kind of want to hold off on that card. Oh, che0nsu realizing he needed to use that hero power. But there's a decent chance that he actually is able to kill him anyways. There's only 10 cards left in the deck here for che0nsu.
Yep.
Couple of draws.
Overgrowth or Wild Growth first. He can hit Swipe, he can hit Moonfire. Can't hit Crystal Power. Can't go face, unfortunately.
Right. So Overflow will draw a good portion of his deck. It will heal RDU back to 7. But, still in a position where he feels pretty comfortable, I imagine.
Oh, there's the lethal setup for next turn.
Right. Doesn't actually have to play anything.
Yeah, I mean, next turn, it's Malygos, Moonfire, and Swipe on the same turn for that matter, because he can fit it all in.
Right. Yeah. Is there any card that he would burn that would be absolutely devastating? The Ysera Unleashed, perhaps, if it's the next card in his deck?
Yeah, I mean, the cards that are left, it's Ysera, and it's Geppetto Joybuzz are two of them, and I think it's like a second over. Oh, there's only one overflow, but it's not good cards that are left in the deck. It's not the ones he really wants to hit at this point. It's like second Crystal Power and stuff like that. He really doesn't care too much.
Yep, makes sense. So RDU has to counter and immediately plays the Murzon to draw 5 cards off the overflow himself. Oh, not gonna draw a little bit more. Forgetting about the Wild Growth and Excess mana. And finds Mindrender Lucia.
Which he can play. Can he make the read though? Because at the moment there's only actually 15 damage in hand though for che0nsu at this point, right? Because he has swipe plus the overflow, or swipe plus the moonfire, sorry, which plus 10 spell damage altogether. It's not winning.
Yeah, and I guess like from RDU's perspective too, you know, he's seen che0nsu draw 26 cards in his deck. He saw him dump, so maybe he is feeling like che0nsu himself doesn't feel like he has all the combo pieces based off the way he was dumping an Innervate. And he knows that, you know, with one Innervate and one Lightning Boom used, there's a limited amount of range with what che0nsu could do.
That's right. One Moonfire gone means it can't be Mali, Germination, double Moonfire or anything like that.
So he could Malygos and Germinate and play the Moonfire. He could also Malygos and swipe. This is definitely a tricky situation, kind of as you mentioned, because he doesn't have that discount.
So if he wants to go for board, he could go Malygos, Innovate Bloom Germination on Malygos, and then go Moonfire and Bog Beam the Murazond, I suppose, just to try and lock down board is probably, I think, the safest bet of trying to win the game at this point.
What to do?
Yeah, I mean, Malygos is still tempo, but RDU's got it covered through the removal and the healing. And if he sticks a minion, Apotheosis is going to do some work. So che0nsu going to try to see if he can stick Malygos, perhaps, with the Bog
That's
Beam.
the best he's got. And this comes at the expense, as you said earlier on, Dan, of not going for the Lightning Bloom into hero power early on. That was almost certainly a locked game at that point, and he didn't make the play. And he's paying for it now.
Yeah, and now if RDU goes for... Actually, he doesn't have enough mana for the Galakrond and Forbidden Words to double remove here.
Oh, it's so close.
What's actually the best way to go about this?
So, Mindrender Lucia on its own doesn't save him because he's just going to tank 8 damage on the following turn. So he would have to do something else first before he plays that if there's absolutely nothing else.
Okay. Oh, what he could do is he could play Mindrender Lucia at the very end and avoid having direct damage from che0nsu, but then he risks like other problems, right? Like what if RDU takes his Galakrond and then RDU gets kind of pressured and he can't handle it. I think this is something that he has to weigh the sequencing of, because Forbidden Words can deal with one Malygos. He can gain life through like Apotheosis as well.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Tiamat, Rush, Fury, Apotheosis that allows him to take out one of the Malygos, if nothing else, and heal for 16 damage at the same time.
Yeah, that's good. It's true, he could just outlast a Druid, right? Druid's going to run out of resources?
He could, if both the swipes weren't in hand. That's what che0nsu needed to close things out, and it was a messy way to take the win. But still, che0nsu does take the victory in Malygos versus Priest.
Yeah, that's right. So RDU almost held off that combo damage, and che0nsu, I was forgetting the Malygos can attack also for 4 to add that damage, because it's not really common for Malygos Druid to win with sticking Malygos over a couple of turns. However, sometimes you got to do it, and that's partially what makes that deck really interesting, right? We've seen throughout the Grandmasters program and many times on ladder, Druids or combo decks in particular have to find alternative ways to victory, because people will be finding ways to disrupt it. If they play Mindrender Lucia and dump your Moonfires, how are you supposed to get your combos off? So this is something that a lot of Druids are well versed in. And che0nsu, outside of that one kind of a tough spot to navigate, and looked like he was pressured by time, seemed to really understand macro, especially from that very early Twilight Runner play.
Exactly. The Twilight Runner, I think, was the real beauty of that line because it meant there was no way for it to be messed with in the priest deck entirely. I think it was even before Shadowed Ruin could come down to take it out. So he was guaranteeing himself those 2 cards, which, as you said, Overflow coming down, the Overgrowth coming down as well. It was all just very, very clean from there on in. I think it was just that one spot where he could have tidied things up a little bit more. It does mean now, though, with the Druid out of the way, I believe he's got the Demon Hunter and the Mage left. And the Demon Hunter for me is the really interesting spot because the comparison I always hear is this damaged Demon Hunter, the kind of hybrid control / damage version, is just a worse Bomb Warrior. But che0nsu has the Demon Hunter, and yet he doesn't have Bomb Warrior. I wonder what he's seeing with this list.
Yeah, I think that Demon Hunter here has kind of fulfilled its very specific role as being a mid-range deck that likes to generally be aggressive, but also has a couple of different backup plans in case the get him with your hero attacking every single turn plan doesn't really work out. I really like that some of these lists have gravitated away from Magtheridon. I think that that card ended up being dead in a lot of matchups. You just want to be really proactive. So the comparison I actually like to make isn't necessarily to Bomb Hunter. It's actually to like the old school mid-range Hunter that would play, Savannah Highmane and kill command and try to set up a board first and then go for like heavy hits for like 12 a turn once it starts to transition to the mid game.
I can see that. I can definitely see the comparison there. One thing I will say, though, is that whatever it's most akin to in terms of archetypes, it's very, very good at beating Tempo Mage, I find. With no heal in the deck whatsoever, with very limited taunt able to be generated for the Mage as well. I think if the Demon Hunter knows what they're doing, which is hit your opponent in the face for the most part, it should be a fairly easy win for che0nsu, all things considered.
Yep, that's right. Ooh, okay, a little spicy. Throwing out that mana burn early to disrupt turn 3 from Mage. That card could be played in a ton of situations. Earlier is better, right? More impact in the early game because it hits a larger percentage of their mana crystals. But definitely interesting to think that is che0nsu deliberately just trying to get ahead in tempo and he's rushing for it, or is turn 3 such a pivotal turn that you want to stop from Mage?
Super interesting, isn't it? Because past turn 3, it gets very, very difficult to guess what they're going to do because the branching paths become so divergent at that point. On turn 3, just slamming Arcane Intellect or Shenvala, I think is probably the main reason that che0nsu's thinking of here, because he really wants to have the ability to kill off Shenvala on the turn it comes down, or things could get messy.
All right, well, RDU picks up a Primordial Studies, which allows him to discover a spell damage minion at discount, the next one that he plays. But does he end up wanting to use it? Sometimes with the Mage, even though you have mana to play cards and spells, you have to really consider what other things you can combine it with, like Shenvala, or with Sorcerer's Apprentice or Mana Cyclone. Ends up going for it anyways, because I don't feel like having that one Primordial Studies with Shenvala next turn would have made the difference. And he finds a Steward of Scrolls, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite means to pick off of the Primordial Studies, that if you're not finding things like another Astromancer Solarium or like a really situational like Azure Explorer. I think those are like my top 3 that I usually like to pick.
Yeah, I like the Steward of Scrolls pick a lot here. Any random spell generation here is huge because it's an extra chance at hitting Ice Barrier for a bit of extra health, or Frostbolt for the most part to go face and stop them attacking with their weapons. I think the really interesting thing on that turn is the fact that there wasn't a Shenvala coming down, because even if you don't anticipate it to actually generate a bunch of 5/5s, it looked kind of tempting there actually with a Ray of Frost to try and get something on the board. And very possibly just go with a Conjurer's Calling on it next turn. I don't know, because at the moment this Shenvala is not really doing a whole lot in hand.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest criticisms against Shenvala at the very beginning of the set when people were evaluating deck lists. It's just that Shenvala sometimes feels like it has a window, and when it passes, it's not as relevant anymore. And it's just one of these things, do you really want to have a card where it's only good under the right conditions at the beginning of the game? And then players started like building out lists more to be a little bit more consistent. So che0nsu can actually be a good reload option, especially if you're able to, say pick up multiple evocations and have really good ability to rebound after your board gets clear. Because the boards that Mage builds aren't super powerful by themselves unless you're getting to the Mana Giant stage with Conjurer's Calling.
This is where things get interesting now for che0nsu, because now we're hitting the mid game. This is where the Demon Hunter should really start coming into its own. And this looks like a pretty nice opportunity for me here, actually, to just go with Shard Shatter Mystic on this turn. The 5/5 is kind of nice here to develop a board and trade here. But you don't want to be trading too much in this matchup, which is why I think if che0nsu is going face, I'm okay with this play. Because you have to realize there's a very finite amount of damage in the deck, and I think the majority of it has to be allocated to your opponent's face. I really like this play from che0nsu.
Yeah, and ultimately, Mage is really good at stopping aggression on the board. They get a bunch of cheap spells often with like Ray of Frost or Brain Freeze, Mirror Image. But it's not really easy for them to stop damage directly from your hero outside of Frostbolt, and they don't really put that inherently in the deck. So che0nsu kind of recognizing his game plan, which is go face. And this is kind of the thing that we're talking about. Oh my goodness, finds a Blade Dance as well to help clean up the board.
This is a complicated turn. I don't think it's the Blade Dance quite yet. I'm definitely looking at Soul Shear plus Shard Shatter on this turn. It activates the Skull of Gul'dan for next turn and clears off most of the board. The question is really just whether I think you're killing off che0nsu or the 5/5 here, because there's a little bit of an argument there, I think, as to which is worth killing.
Yeah, I think I like that because the Blade Dance is particularly powerful against the Mana Giants, which you kind of sometimes anticipate to come out. If you're able to build up a really powerful hero attack, you can just use it to clear off both of those minions that come out, assuming that they're within range. Sometimes you get like Batterhead and it just feels like you're unable to kill it, even if you get like 10 attack. But it's kind of rare. Usually you should be able to deal with it.
Yeah, I like this line as well. I was definitely, I think, tunnel visioning on developing the Battle Fiend on that turn, but completely clearing the board is definitely a stronger play there from che0nsu, so a good spot. And again, leading up into going for Skull of Gul'dan, which at this point, because of his decision to go face last turn, means he is getting very, very close to finding that lethal damage to close out the game.
Yep, that's right, and that's kind of the wow, another Skull of Gul'dan in outcast position. But yeah, this is where the Demon Hunter truly shines, when it's able to get ahead in damage early, able to leverage resources like Skull of Gul'dan to combo, right? It kind of transitions to that combo damage we're talking about, where it seemingly pushes like a dozen attack out of nowhere. And che0nsu has Twin Slice, Soul Shard Lapidary, and Glaive-Bound Adept. I mean, that's 13 damage just from those cards alone. You can play it all next turn as a surprise out of nowhere.
I love this from che0nsu. Yeah, like, just milk as much damage as you can. Mana isn't his concern anymore. It's just having enough damage to get over the finish line. And this gives him the highest chance of doing that. I think, again, it's really good understanding of the deck from che0nsu.
So now, if you're already you just saw your opponent play Skull of Gul'dan and then Hero Power Pass. That is, screaming to me that he's trying to save some kind of combo to push, especially if he's not going to Hero Power Blood Mage Thalnos, right? Because we know that how much Mage excels by having spell damage on the board through things like Cram Session. So I think from RDU's perspective, I'd be extremely worried about dying next turn. And if so, what's the best course of action to go to try to play around that?
I mean, step one is cry that your Archmage isn't a Violet Warden, which is the same minion with Taunt, which would be disgustingly powerful here. Step two is then, I think, to, go for the Astromancer Solarian to try and get yourself a Solarian Prime for the following turn. Probably your best chance here of winning.
Well, Twin Slice in second slice is 4 damage. Glaive-Bound is 8 damage. Soul Shard Lapidary is 13. Hero Power is 14. I don't count lethal just yet, Derek.
Yeah, not quite. So then che0nsu needs to think, right, what's the backup plan? How do I... Oh my goodness. That's how you do it. That's the backup plan. You just kill.
My god. And that's lethal. Right?
Yeah.
I believe so.
8,
Oh,
12,
yeah,
17, I think, as I count.
Yep. The only thing that he had to worry about was whether or not he had enough mana.
Mm-hmm.
And you can
Order
see
it correctly.
why this is such a powerful deck, because in the late stage of the game, you can do crazy damage. RDU is just dead. And that's going to be a 2-0 lead for che0nsu as Demon Hunter gets the win versus Mage. And that just puts che0nsu down to his final deck with Rogue, Band, Druid, and Demon Hunter getting the wins. It's just his Tempo Mage that's going to be waiting to get a win here.
I'm so glad that we're seeing this from che0nsu, because I think this really beautifully builds the character of his player. Because, you know, we sometimes talk about innate skill in Hearthstone, how some players seem to just get the game more. They don't make these kind of technical mistakes quite so much. If we are going to ascribe to that theory, I don't believe that che0nsu is one of the naturally most talented players in Hearthstone. I think he's a extremely hard worker. I think that's how he gets to this point. And he clearly showed me there that he understands the deck. He understands the matchup. He knew face is the place the majority of the time, and he played it really, really well there. And even though from che0nsu, you do sometimes see these kind of mistakes creeping in where the rope starts burning and he lets the pressure get to him, I think when he's putting in the work, which he's definitely been doing for the last few months, he gets these kind of wins which most players might not be able to do.
All right, well, here we go into potentially the final game, as RD once more will turn to his Highlander Priest to try and turn back the series. Apologies there, it's not Hunter from che0nsu, it is Mage. His Mage is pretty straightforward. It is playing the Cobalt Spellkin Dragon variant that likes to capitalize on Arcane Breath. Definitely better against aggressive decks early, because you can capitalize on keeping up your resource generation. But RDU really isn't an aggressive deck, although he's playing aggressively. Coin, Mind Flayer, Karj. Is this what you need to do to beat Mage here, Derek?
It's definitely plan A. This is the dream from RDU. The only thing he's missing is, like, I don't know, Raise Dead to get back another Zephyrus here. It's absolutely disgusting. Apotheosis here in order to kill off the Shenvala and stick an incredibly powerful board. Like, that's not even necessarily the only play he could make on that turn that would just insta-win him the game. This is the steepest of steep climbs now for che0nsu.
Yeah, hopefully this Arcane Breath can give him something to work with. Pyroblast is cool, but doesn't really fit into his game plan. Does not. Looks like he has his Arcane Missiles. And the question becomes, is it worth playing a Mana Cyclone just for 2 spells when you know how much potential it has? Oh, okay, apparently you just get the 2 best spells in Mage. What?
The best expensive spell and the best cheapest spell in the entire class. That is a ridiculous Cyclone for 2 spells.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
that's everything you want.
Raise Dead. Both sides. Like, this is a disgusting display from both sides here.
Yeah, how do you go about it, actually, you know? Because this turn, I think because right now the Raise Dead is purely his Mind Flayer card, and if his lad partner dies, then it also enters the death pool, his graveyard, so to speak.
So in that case, are we looking at trying to play Zephyrus as soon as possible just to get it in the pool and get another one off of Raise Dead?
You don't pick the ones.
Definitely a consideration.
And it's just to clear it off, and I think this makes sense. I think getting a little... Well, Raise Dead also has spell power, which is something funny to think about. You can deal extra damage.
That's nothing. I've seen a 13 damage Raise Dead before.
That's right. They do get pretty ridiculous at times.
che0nsu there, I think, was expecting the Cabal Acolyte plus the Wave of Apathy there, because that's usually what that trade means going into turn 5. The news is slightly better for him, because I think that would pretty much be instantly game-losing if that were to come down, but it's still not looking great for che0nsu.
I mean, che0nsu, it's not looking great, but at what is happening here? A pair of brain freezes. Definitely some shenanigans are going to happen this game where, you know, as this mid-game trading goes on, because that's basically what's going to happen. RDU, by the way, sees the Brain Freeze, Evocation, and Mana Giant. Does not see the Puzzle Box. But at the same time, can you ever truly play around Puzzle Box?
Yeah,
no one ever really knows.
I'm thinking Mana Giant is very often a 0-mana 8/8 in Priest, right? Like, he could definitely do with a tad more reactivity in this hand, but I don't think it's better than Mana Giant.
Right. It's not like Mana Giant. See, the difference between Mana Giant that I think people used to get confused is that you have to play any card that didn't start in your deck. And Priest does that very well. He has, like, Raised Dead, for example, that has helped him to do that. So it ends up being pretty solid. And I do like that Mana Giant. I think people have this false conception about Mana Giant is that it's, like, based off the spells that you play. But, yeah, RDU seems to be pretty solid there. Font of Power discovers a Sorcerer's Apprentice with this hand.
This Giant is just coming down for 0 mana on this turn, almost guaranteed. This is disgusting.
Right. With the possibility that even Contra's Calling gets made from this evocation.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, Counterspell going into a Soul Mirror turn. That looks like a fairly high priority play to me.
It's too bad it's so expensive. He does have Combustion to help clear off this other Cobalt Spellkin, but he can just also draw cards here.
Yeah, I think he's...
Oh!
If he, yeah, that's the one. He needed any spell to play there to get down Giant. If he didn't, I think he was just ripping the Evocation there just to get the Giant down, because that is what matters on this turn. Turn 7 with a Counterspell in play. This is a great setup by che0nsu.
Yeah, and... You know, Priest does not have the best tools to deal with this right now. RDU is going to start things off with the Disciple. It's another Mind Player, okay. So you got to test for Counterspell. Right now, RDU is trying to defuse the secrets.
You don't pick the one.
Which means, like, Kaj, Wave of Apathy was kind of tempting there.
Finds a Holy Smite, which, you know, he does need to deal with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, because leaving it up is a lot more problematic than actually leaving up the Mana Giant, in my opinion. But
I must consider.
he can't actually do everything that you kind of mentioned, right? He wants to be able to develop more onto the board. He wants to respond to the threats, but he can't really do all that.
Not too quickly.
Yeah, he can't. Like, I imagine the way this turn ends up is he just accepts that he's going to tank the 8 damage here and will prioritize killing off the Apprentice. But it could just be Wave of Apathy plus the Holy Smite. That's like the least proactive but most defensive game plan.
Yeah, I think I like holding on to Wave of Apathy because I have C at my next turn. Whoa, he's just going to develop, leaving up the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Derek, he's asking to get punished. There's an Evocation and a Mana Cycle in the hand.
He could just die right now.
What?
Almost
entirely free spells.
What? Another box? What? Frost Nova. I'm snap picking that.
Yes, it looks good to me. Learn Draconic is sometimes okay just a supercharge. Oh, okay, another Wind Portal. Summon a random 4-cost minion when your opponent plays a spell. A little unusual.
Interesting.
Maybe just for the mind games of the secret. No, he already has another Wind Portal in his evocation.
This whole turn felt a little bit misordered for me. I think like a trade into Devolving Missiles and then go for the Arcane Missiles, I think was probably a slightly better order there.
Yeah. RDU just watched his opponent play, you know, 8 cards for free, and it's continued to do so. Triple Font of Power.
Just go, go, go. Attack with your minions. That's the most important thing here. Get the attacks in. He missed out on a second Apprentice there, but it doesn't really matter that much, I don't think. Get the attacks in. Okay, missed.
Yeah.
Oh no, he attacked earlier. Okay, good enough. Good enough.
What? He just finds mirrors.
That's going to cost Apprentice and the Evocation, right? So
right.
He's going to get Apprentice and a whole bunch of cheap spells? Oh my god.
He's trying to test for secrets, though.
Okay, I can respect this.
All right. Okay, the Shade Quill. So that's going to heal RDU. The Sorcerer's Apprentice is not going to die.
Yep, that definitely felt like some pretty strong misordering.
And the attacks? I mean, I guess he was hoping for Vaporize.
Yeah, it activated Vaporize or Flame Ward, which was like, you know, a 2 out of 3 times. That worked out a lot better for him. So, not strictly wrong there from RDU, but I don't know if that was necessarily worth it.
I mean,
Frostbolt.
che0nsu theoretically has lethal this turn. But, let's see. Steward of Scrolls.
My business.
Okay, player's secret, discover a spell. He's got budget Hanar here, if he can make it work.
There you go.
It's actually just Hanar.
To secrets.
Oh, a Pexis Blast! Yes! I want that. I want anything that can go face. What? Why?
Why is,
okay,
I guess he's going to summon the dragon this turn. So he's going to play it again.
I disagree, but fine, whatever.
Does it matter, right? Is the bigger question.
Yeah.
RDU has Murzon, which actually with the Frost Nova played allows him to Frost Nova right back.
True.
He can renew as well. I think he is slightly concerned about the secrets being played. Counterspell will stop that.
You think this is your time? It is mine.
And he does get a Circle of Healing and his own secrets.
Okay, a couple of garbage cards in hand.
Yeah, I feel like the Murzon last turn would have been much more effective, but again, I understand why RDU chose to wait for it as long as he did. Now, che0nsu, he's actually staring at...
Oh my god. Oh my god, I can't take it down.
Jeez. Another evocation.
It's just too much stuff. Apprentice still in play.
Wait.
Oh!
Oh my god, he finds Freeze!
Frostbolt!
So,
Frostbolt, a Pexis Blast. It's almost just lethal.
Yeah. Does he want to go for it? Here's the thing. Is there any chance that RDU actually has a counter lethal if, say, he finds Draconic Studies into Alex Straza? Or is he just like... Because I feel like you're in such a dominant position that I would not... I don't want to get too crazy here. Like, I feel so far ahead. I'd rather just Kona Cold and Frostbolt.
I agree. You're winning the game, just don't throw it away.
It feels like Hearthstone has gotten to this point where, you know, there are narrow corner case outs that you sometimes do have to account for, like the puzzle box on the other side from Mage. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes you're in a position where you can actually play a little bit around it.
Yeah.
There's Draconic Studies! Off the top of the deck. I mean, it could have been a crazy outcome here. RDU still can actually clear the board if he finds Deathwing.
Right, so Deathwing, Murazond, Brightwing, I guess? Or unless it's Spellkin to try and hit renew and then whatever else you need.
Shadowward Ruin? No, that wouldn't be enough.
You have been.
That looks like it's death. 3-0. che0nsu sweeps RDU, the Grandmasters Clash. And for this round, che0nsu, Korea, APAC, they get the W over RDU, Romania, and EU. But that's just, you know, one round, and we've seen plenty of players able to come back. But if you're trying to go for a top 8, you really got to make your first day count. You know, the people who go undefeated today are the ones who are very likely to advance through. So almost no more margin for error for RDU. But for che0nsu, it's looking good.
Yeah, he's looking very, very good. And again, like I said, I think it's a good holistic picture of che0nsu. He works hard, he finds the matchups, he knows them super inside and out because of how hard he grinds these matchups. And then along the way, you're usually going to see some kind of weird ordering that just doesn't seem to quite make sense. But in the end, I think he's a strong enough player to definitely go all the way in this tournament. And I'm excited for him because he's off to a very strong start and a well-deserving player.
Yep, that's right. So with that, that brings us to the rest of the matches here for Swiss. So we're going to take a few minutes and get set. If you want to follow along with us, you can always check things out at playhearthstone.com/esports to get all the information about the Masters Tour, or HS Esports on Twitter, which are kind of posting those updates. We're going to take a few, and when we come back, the rest of Round 2 Swiss here for Masters Tour Montreal Online.
Masters Tour Montreal Online is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network. T-Mobile.